Mike Murray.
This is
SNL.
SNL
By the numbers.
Numbers.
From fired to host, 53 months heals all wounds. Gilly's second chance. There's the opening haiku for you. Welcome to SNL By The Numbers, the home of SNL stats. I am your host, Mike Murray of the SNN, a presentation of LateNighter.com. We are covering episode 960. So 40 till we hit the 1K episode in a couple seasons. We're covering, of course, Shane Gillis, 21 Savage, season 49, episode 12. I'm bringing back two of my favorite SNL minds. So this is really a murderer's row of SNL podcasters. We have, first of all, it's one of my favorite people just, in general, but I love hearing him on all podcasts. It's a Bill Kenney. Welcome back to the show. It's been a while.
Mike, I missed you, man. I'm okay saying that, right? And listen, I'm calling shotgun right now on that 1000th SNL. So make sure that I'm on that by the numbers in October of 2025, somewhere around there.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have, I'll have a lot of episodes to compare it to by 1,000, well, at least, 40 more.
Right.
And from Pop Culture 5, from SNL Hall of Fame, big basketball guy, big SNL guy. It's Thomas Sena. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back, Mike. It's been since October. I think I was here for the Bad Bunny episode.
Bad Bunny.
We had a great time there. I'm battling some allergies. New Mexico allergies are hitting me. So if my voice sounds even more sultry than usual, that's the reason. So just warning everybody now.
So New Mexico allergies. What's the fauna situation? The flora and fauna.
I don't know. It's really just dust. New Mexico. If you've ever been to New Mexico or flown over it, it's just like brown dust. So
I mean, I've seen Breaking Bad 6 times, so I feel like I've been there, but
pretty much
never
like
have
that.
been there.
Yeah, you don't need it. Yeah, it's pretty much like Breaking Bad, honestly. It's dust and like meth in the air, so that's what I'm allergic to.
Okay. So anyway, this is an announcement that I, for better or worse, was just like so excited about, because not necessarily because of the season or the show, but because of the SNL lore. So people that like this podcast and listen to Thomas's podcast love SNL history. And this is a case that it's something that I did mention in a preseason taping of this podcast, is that Shane Gillis could come back to host this season or next. And when it happened, I was kind of floored, especially because I had tickets to him in Boston on Friday the 23rd, which was rescheduled to the end of March, and couldn't be for a better reason than to come back. Well, come back? I mean, not really coming back, I guess, if he never started in the first place. But Shane Gillis hosted SNL, and I want to start the show right away with a little spirited debate. I'm going to go to Bill first, and there's a lot of publications saying, former SNL cast member Shane Gillis, and they give the context of, is Shane Gillis a SNL cast member in the history of the show, Bill?
No, unequivocally, no.
And why not?
Okay, if you to put it in sports terms, as we like to do, if you go to spring training with the Sox or the Dodgers or the Guardians and you never start an official game, you are not considered a member of that team. You will not be in their statistics books. You will not be anywhere listed other than maybe a blurb that this guy was in spring training and got cut March 30th. He never appeared in a sketch. He was never in the opening credits. He never even wrote a sketch, as far as I know, before he was fired. So this is not an Emily Prager situation, who was in the credits and also was an uncredited background player back in the 70s. So this is not that. No, he's not a cast member.
Well, you stole my comeback by name dropping Emily Prager, because that's where I was going to go to. And this is a situation where I think you could make an argument for both, and I'd be very comfortable with either way. Thomas, what about you? I'll put it this way. If someone challenged you, said, Mike, Bill, Thomas, 5 minutes, pen and paper, name as many cast members as possible, and then you handed in your sheet of paper and it said, Will Ferrell, Phil Hartman, Kate McKinnon, Shane Gillis, would that even count? Or would that be like, nope, does not count?
I wouldn't take points off for naming Shane Gillis, but I wouldn't give them points for naming Shane Gillis. And that shows what nerds we are. I had the Emily Prager thing in my mind. Laurie Metcalf, even though Laurie did appear, I think, in like a Weekend Update bit, I consider both of them cast members, not Shane. It's like if any NBA fans are listening, Chris Paul was never a member of the Lakers. He got traded to the Lakers, and then the trade was announced, and then the commissioner vetoed it. So Chris Paul, never a member of the Lakers. Shane Gillis, sorry, Shane, like, don't consider you a former cast member. So whatever publication says that is wrong.
Because he was a cast member for 3 days, as in, if you said who's the current cast of SNL season 45, you'd name the cast and you'd say also Chloe Fineman, Shane Gillis, and Bowen Yang. If I asked you the question 4 days later, you would not name him and you'd be correct. So I think it's an interesting little nugget, because only other scenario, which was actually just mentioned recently online, was Catherine O'Hara mentioning her short tenure at SNL. So another person who was hired by the show but never appeared. So we have, in case you don't know the details of Emily Prager, the Gene Domanian era, when they had one episode after and then the season ended, they had Emily Prager in the credits, never appeared. So I would consider her to be an SNL cast member, even though never appeared on the show as a cast member, but as Bill mentioned, did appear on the show before. So weird situations, but it does come up because I do stats a lot about former cast members hosting and things like that. So I have to be consistent with, is this part of that? So with Shane Gillis, I'm kind of torn, because I agree with you that if I had to decide, I'd say he's not one, but as an alum of the show, it's a little different scenario. So Bill, if you had to make an argument on that side, is there any grounds there, or are you firmly on this is a no?
I'm pretty firm. I mean, like Thomas said, I'm not going to be mad at somebody if they say that he was a cast member, because he was hired to be a cast member. Like you said, he was for 3 or 4 days, he was considered a cast member. I mean, I think if he had appeared just in that first episode and then gotten fired, obviously, then he's a cast member. But I would have a hard time making an argument on the other side, just because, you have nothing. You have, like I said, no opening credits, no sketch appearances. No, can't give it to him. Sorry.
I'll make one more sports analogy. I mean, this is the show to do it. It's By the Numbers. We talk about sports, and I have 2 sports fans on with me. So if you don't like sports, at least I try to bring it back to SNL as quickly as possible, which is if you were drafted into a professional sports league, but never made off the practice squad in the NFL. If you go to your their Wikipedia page, it'll say like Seattle Seahawks, like 2005, with an asterisk. And it might, at the top of the page, it would say, Bill Kenney was a linebacker in the NFL. But if you have no stats, Bill, like, were you? That's the thing, is that technically they were pro athletes, but they never played professionally in that league. So that's my one kind of thing where I'm like, if you had to name all 160 cast members, give or take, you could make a case, but I agree with you overall.
I think Shane could say, if he wanted to, like if he was working some comedy club after whatever, maybe he could say former SNL cast member and get on a technicality. My wife, well, so do I. Let's be real. We watch The Bachelor together, and sometimes they'll have guys on The Bachelor or Bachelorette that say, "Oh, he played in the NFL," or "He played with the Dallas Cowboys," and then of course I'll look them up, and I tell my wife he played like training camp with him, or he's like an undrafted. He was on the practice squad. So technically, if you're on the practice squad, you could say he was a Green Bay Packer. But were you really? I don't know. Probably more so in that case than in Shane Gillis's case for SNL.
Yeah, that's the one part where I'm just a little unsure. And there's a pretty viral clip out there, because Shane Gillis does do a lot of podcasts, sometimes gets him in trouble. But is that he went to West Point and dropped out immediately. He played D1 football and got injured immediately and was cast on SNL and was fired immediately. So his line was, "I technically have an amazing resume that I played D1 football. I am a decorated war veteran because it was during wartime when I was discharged and I was cast on Saturday Night Live. And now he's hosted SNL.
Yeah.
So resume continues. But let's look at the screen time and talk about how we felt about Shane's episode. And we'll pull him up here. And I will say that Shane Gillis, for not being a cast member, if that's the ruling, he had more screen time in his episode than the rookie seasons of Aristotle Atari, Lauren Holt, and Punky Johnson. So it packed enough screen time in one night to be above them in the career totals. So we did get a glimpse of what it would look like. So here is the screen time for 49-12. Shane Gillis at the top, 27 minutes, 25 seconds. Now I'll pause right there. That is the headline because I'm going to do some host screen times later, but I did not expect Shane Gillis to have like a grand slam screen time total. And that's what that is right there, 27-25, because the next person on the list is Marcelo Hernandez, who we should talk about, another featured player with the leading screen time in the cast at 8:25. So there's a 19-minute discrepancy between the host and the next person, which actually is the second most of the season because Kate McKinnon had 19 minutes, 33 seconds more than Michael Che, who was the screen time leader this season for the Christmas episode. Next is Mikey Day at 7 minutes 24, Heidi Gardner 7 minutes 21, musical guest 21 Savage 7 minutes 7, Colin Jost 6 minutes 54, Sarah Sherman with 4 appearances of 5 minutes and 51 seconds, Bowen Yang, Shane Gillis's classmate, 5 minutes 48, Devin Walker with a 5:23, JAJ 5 minutes 11, Dismukes 5 minutes 10, Ego Wodem with a fantastic night in my opinion with 4:39, Michael Longfellow finally in the middle of the pack, 3:46, Keenan 3:43, Chloe Feynman 2 minutes 42, Punky at 2:11, Summer Walker was a feature in the second 21 Savage performance. She had 1 minute 59, Michael Che 1:47, Chloe Trost 1:40, Molly Carney 1:11, Brent Fayez 31 seconds, and then Joan and Phil Gillis, Shane's parents, at 4 seconds each. Thomas, who do you want to talk about? Who did you really enjoy in this episode in the cast?
Well, I'm curious. So Marcelo, where does he stand now as far as butt screen time goes, like in SNL history? So is it like Chris Farley probably has a big lead, and then it's everybody else vying for like that second place? Like, where does that fit into your metrics, Mike?
Well, he's got 5 seconds now, and it's early in his career. So, I do some on pace stats, and, Marcelo, he's, 30 episodes into his tenure. He's got at least 5 seconds. So if he goes another 30 episodes, I wouldn't be surprised to hit 15. What do you think?
So he can catch Farley there. Well, that's good to know. That's why you're my guy. I think it seems like with this episode, a lot of the right people were on screen, like got a lot of this. It seemed like it was a lot of people who really meshed with the host really well. So I think like it seemed like Marcelo did. Sarah certainly, actually, that's one that I want to highlight. Sarah, maybe I would have loved if Sarah got more screen time because she really seemed to vibe with Shane Gillis during the episode. So I think Sarah probably not being top 3 as far as cast members is surprising because I think her impact on the show outweighed that. As far as just chemistry with the host, I think it was really like top notch this episode.
I totally agree. I mean, I would say Sarah first, but I think that there's a lot of hesitancy going into this night because, like, does the cast like this guy? Are they mad that he's there? Like, we don't even know. We don't really know why he was asked back. So to see the cast really, like, I thought he worked so well with them, and it was a very cast heavy night. So if you're a follower of By the Numbers and see these charts on a weekly basis, you'll see that like there's a lot of people that are 3+ minutes, and that's not the case always. So this was a other than I think it was the Dakota Johnson episode, this was like the most cast heavy episode. So it was like a really team effort. We had that HR meeting sketch with a lot of people in it. and we had a game show sketch. So a lot of times with the stand-up, you think the monologue is going to take up a lot of room, but in this case, the cast really got to play with the host a lot. So, Bill, who do you want to highlight tonight?
Got to point out. Well, first of all, this may be the only time I ever say this on any podcast on this here network. But where's the Rob Schneider love? I mean, he showed full moon in an episode back in season 17. So
Sensitive naked man.
Yes, this is why you're here, Bill. This is why you're here.
But Heidi, my girl Heidi, what a night. I mean, she was all over the place, being in 6 sketches. I loved her in the church sketch. Loved her in the trying to think of what else. Forrest Gump, she was really good. Fugliana, she had a moment. So she continues her female dominance and overall dominance on the show this year. So glad to see that. Also, JAJ. I mean, seeing him bring back his Lindsey Graham, seeing him play off of Shane with the dueling Trumps and the pre-tape, which I got to talk to John a lot about today on the Patrons exclusive. I think those two would be my two that I would point out.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about Ego. Like I mentioned, huge night for her. And I wanted to look because Ego has kind of been a 10-1 queen lately. Like in the stats, she's been anchoring a lot of those. And people kind of think of, after the monologue, we're going to go into a game show or a TV show. It's going to be a Mikey Streeter special. And so I looked, I'm like, how often is Ego Odom in her career in the first sketch? So out of the 106 episodes she's been a cast member, 43 of them she's been in the first sketch. That's 41%. And this is only the 6th time in her career she's had 2+ minutes of screen time in the first sketch. So that was a total Ego piece. I thought she was just unreal as Father Lawrence in that sketch. So I even rewatched, it was twice as good, I would say. I think the whole episode in general, I was like kind of nervous watching. And then when I rewatched it, I thought every sketch was a lot better. Dismuke's 6 appearances. That's the 2nd time in his career. He had 7 in the Molly Shannon. He had 7 in the Michael B. Jordan. And so this is the first time in his career he's had 6. But so overall, he's had 3 episodes with 6 or more. Marcelo's 2nd best episode of his career behind the Jenna Ortega episode. Lowest screen time for Michael Che since the 2020 Chappelle episode. And then about that monologue, it's the 6th longest monologue of the past 6 seasons. Any guesses on who is the top 5? Thomas, want to give me 2 picks?
Dave Chappelle. Seemed like he went really long one time.
Oh, yeah.
With one of them. I would guess Dave Chappelle and all of his hosting gigs probably.
Yeah, both Chappelles are 1 and 2. Want to give me one more?
Mulaney.
Yep. Bill, what about you?
Took all my picks. I don't know. Nate? Is Nate up there? Yeah.
Nate would be in 4th.
Okay.
And then Mulaney again. So Chappelle in 46, Chappelle in 48, Mulaney in 46, Bargatze this year, and Mulaney in 45, and then Shane Gillis last week. So it was a 7-minute, 56-second monologue from Shane this week. And so that's kind of just to bring this all together with talking about, is Shane Gillis a cast member and his incredibly high screen time. I wanted to pivot to just to highlight how big of screen time that was, is to look at the top screen time of all hosts since season 44. So Shane Gillis is in 3rd place. Bill Kenney, your reaction?
Wow. No, was not expecting that. Mike, you always bring the surprises. Oh my goodness. I knew Sudeikis would not be toppled, but that's shocking. I'm not really sure how that came to be because, Miles Teller was in a lot. Sandler was in a lot. I mean, it's very close at the top 5 there other than Sudeikis. So, but that's still a wow for sure.
And for context, I did eliminate musical performance time because double duty hosts get to have 2 performances and they also don't get to introduce the musical guests. So I took that away from everybody and just did only the other parts of the show. So
did you count Sandler's Farley song?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Because he wasn't a double duty host. Yeah. Shawn Mendes was the MG that night. Shane Gillis, speaking of Sandler, beat him by 1 second. So our top, I'll read them off for you and get some reaction. Chat weigh in if you were shocked as I was. either going into the night or following the episode that Shane Gillis had that much screen time. But he did a lot of sketches and he was front and center for a lot of them. So as of right now, I'm pretty open on the socials about, my journey back in time doing stats. So I have season 44 till now. So this is all the screen time that I've personally recorded. It's Jason Sudeikis with, like I said, maybe an unbeatable record. Me and John talked about maybe Betty White could beat that because she was in so much in her episode, but Sudeikis was in the cold open as Biden. He did the devil on Update. He was in everything on that show except one pre-tape. So Sudeikis kind of has the mold of how far you can go as a host. And Sudeikis, without musical performance introductions of Brandi Carlile, was at 33 minutes, 52 seconds. That's number one. Number two, John Mulaney in 47 with 27.52. So 6 minutes lower than Sudeikis for the number two spot, which is why I think that Sudeikis record might be unbreakable. Shane Gillis, 27.16, again, without the 21 Savage intros. Then Sandler, 27.15. Miles Teller, surprising maybe, but he was on screen the entire cold open of the 48 premiere and the Manning cast, followed by Pete Davidson, this year's premiere, Amy Schumer in 48, Maya Rudolph, 46, Kate McKinnon, 49. These are all at the 25, 26-minute range. Molly Shannon last year had 25.49. Woody Harrelson last year, 25.45. Aubrey Plaza had 24 minutes, 55 seconds, followed by Steve Carell, Seth Meyers, John Mulaney in 45, J-Lo in 45, Eddie Murphy, and Adam Driver in 45. So season 45 had a lot of big-time hosts. So, Bill, what do you notice about this list right now? What's like a glaring thing that you're seeing here?
As somebody mentions in the chat, a lot of alum involved. Now, remind me, Mike, was Mulaney in the cold open for that season 47?
Season 47 cold open, that was that his 5-timer? That might have been the Ukraine cold open with Cecily and Kate.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So very
no, he wasn't.
abbreviated cold open.
If he had been in the cold open, he would have given Sudeikis a run for his money. So that's interesting. That seems to be the key, right? To making it at least into the top 5 for the most part. Well, no, Gillis wasn't in the cold open either. So interesting. Yeah. A lot of alum, a lot of stand up. Schumer, Davidson doing his stand up during the monologue. So that kind of expands all of these people's time, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. Is this is like an SNL family list, even if you include John Mulaney as a writer, and now he's a 5-timer, and even Aubrey Plaza, who worked at 8H before she was famous. So, Thomas, I want to ask you, if you look at this list, would you say that you see like a lot or a few weak episodes, or are these like big time hosts producing really good episodes?
Oh, but let's see. Yeah, kind of looking back, most of these were pretty decent. The Miles Teller episode I thought was okay. It was like an okay first episode for that season. My least favorite episode, just kind of at first glance, might have been on this list the maybe the Pete episode. Though the Carell, was that the Thanksgiving one with the Kern sketch? I think that was kind of a
yes,
that was
it was
kind of a that was kind of a down episode.
That was the Thanksgiving in space.
Yeah,
where Pete Davidson played the Kern.
Yeah, that was kind of rough. But it's mostly pretty solid episodes, I think. As far as like the people on here, gosh, like Miles Teller seems to be an outlier because I think everybody else has that personality, almost like a dominant sort of personality, to where it makes sense to have them front and center. If they're going to be in a sketch, they probably just wouldn't be bit players or have, I don't know, sometimes we see a host that is in a sketch for like 15 seconds. With my SNL Hall of Fame research, we just did Anne Hathaway, and she had a really nice role in this one pre-tape, but it was like 15 seconds.
Was it Mokiki?
It was not Mokiki. It was the Megamart sketch.
Okay.
Where she was hopped up on Four Loko and just like played an excited shopper, but she was in for 15 seconds. But with all these people, they have the personality types to like, it makes sense that they were front and center in almost everything that they did, except Miles Teller. That's so weird. That, like, of course, a lot of these lists have outliers. Miles Teller's like an outlier on this to
Well,
me.
I just looked it up real quick. I mentioned Miles Teller being in the Manning cast cold open, and they had him as
Yeah.
Peyton Manning, Dismukes as Eli Manning, and they were like in the corner of the screen, so the camera really never went off them. So Miles Teller racked up 6 minutes 50 seconds in the
Wow.
cold open. So
Okay.
before he even walked out the door for his monologue, he was, halfway there to an average host. So after that, he had a 4 minute 5 second monologue. Rooftop bar sketch with Ego and Chloe, he had 3:40. The Charmin Bears 3.5 minutes, and then the classic Grimace sketch, he had 3 minutes 1 second.
Yikes.
And the opening sketch, the Send Something Normal, he also had 3 minutes 1 second. So he
Okay.
had a lot of 3+ minute appearances for a host, and he was a first timer.
Okay, yeah, that explanation makes sense, especially about the cold open. Because no offense to Miles Teller, but he's not like Mr. Charisma, especially compared to a lot of the other people on this list.
Yeah, I mean, as maybe you mention Miles Teller if you'd like, but are any host on this list that you'd be like, wow, I'm surprised they're back? Because a lot of these are alums. So
There are a lot of alums. Maybe Jennifer Lopez. That was she had hosted before season 45,
right.
if I remember correctly, and she was okay. But maybe I was a little surprised that J-Lo was back. Well, she's popular, but as far as quality hosts, maybe Jennifer Lopez is the one that sticks out with that.
Bill, any for you on here?
That I don't think would come back? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of them are already repeat hosts, but going forward,
Honestly, I'd be surprised if we ever see Woody again. I think his episode last year was so awful, and with
Agreed.
his crazy monologue, I think he Kanye'd his way out of the building. So
yeah, weird to maybe become like sort of persona non grata when you receive your 5-timer jacket.
right? Yeah, little ironic.
Yeah. So in the monologues, looking up the longest monologues there, I'm like, Woody was not number one, but his monologue felt the longest. So there's something to be said there. His monologue the past 6 seasons was the 12th longest at 6:40. And that's not a stand-up monologue. Everything above Woody Harrelson's was a stand-up comedian doing stand-up, except him telling a story about a tree, I guess, amongst other things. But so yeah, anyway, Shane Gillis like beating out Pete or a Kate or a Eddie. Of course, I said Sandler by 1 second, but just blows my mind. And before we wrap this up, Bill, I'll ask you, do you think, other than Shane doing stand-up, which is going to take some time, that maybe Lauren wanted to put him front and center, or was there a concerted effort to make him like the star of the show? Because I don't think it felt that way. It felt like a very team episode, but the stats don't lie.
Yeah, the stats don't lie, but yeah, I think there probably was some behind the scenes mechanisms to try to put him, because you knew that you were going to have, almost in a very different way, like a Kim Kardashian episode, where you're going to have eyeballs on the show that don't typically watch the show, whether they've just moved on from SNL or they're mad at them for firing Shane in the first place. So they all came back to the show to either hate watch it or to see what he was going to do. So I think you definitely felt the need to have him in as much as possible. So but again, like you said, it did feel like a team effort. Everything was so evenly spread. It was not a Forte situation at all, where it was just like, where the hell's the cast? Everybody was out there to play. There was only really one sketch that everybody was in, or most of the people were in. And it still felt like there was a decent amount of people milling in and out of all the sketches. So I think that was good.
Oh, Mike, too, you mentioned like part of the narrative of this episode was how's Shane going to play with the cast and all of that. Well, it seems honestly like he knows a lot of people. He's friends with a lot of writers on the staff. So I know he's friends with Michael Che. He seems to be friendly with Alex English. He and Rosebud Baker, I wouldn't be surprised. They have similar sensibilities, honestly, with their comedy. I wouldn't be surprised if he knows her well. So it seems
I
like
think
Shane
he toured with Rosebud
did he tour
on the
with her?
Burt
Yeah.
Kreischer tour. Yeah.
Okay. So he knows a lot of writers. He seems like he's friendly with a lot of people at the show. So I can see a concerted effort on the part of Che and some of the other writers to include him in a lot, since he seems to have very friendly relationships with most of the show.
Yeah, agreed. I think that him coming in, and he did mention on another podcast that he brought his friend. He's part of the duo of Gilly and Keeves. He brought his friend. I think it's John
John
McKeever.
McKeever, yeah.
Yeah. And they pitched together because SNL will let you bring in somebody, and none of their stuff got picked up. So if you were thinking that Shane brought any of his stuff and that was his sensibilities, then I guess we were wrong, because they were written by the writing staff and not Shane and his buddy.
He said they were a little intimidated in the writer's room earlier in the week, so they didn't really push hard enough, probably, for the stuff that they wanted to get on.
Yeah, they were like going in like, who are these guys? Like, we're gonna get our stuff on. Like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, let's drop that one.
So the
These
opposite of
guys
the
know their
Chappelle
stuff.
episode.
Yes.
Yes. Definitely, yeah. So like looking at total cast screen time. So out of whatever 115 or so episodes, Shane's episode was 25th of the most cast screen time. So percentile wise, that's definitely high. I mentioned earlier the Dakota Johnson episode with Timberlake this year had the most cast screen time of any episode I've recorded, with almost 2 hours of cast. So that was a huge one, and that's followed by Molly Shannon, 11 minutes less, and then Reggae Jean Page. So those are the most cast we've seen in one episode. So of course, cast size will factor into that, but I mean, we've had a big cast for a while. So there's one cast member that hasn't been named tonight that I want to talk about. I've never done a segment on him, and I thought tonight would be a good night because he had a recurring character for the 4th time, and that's Devin Walker. So, Thomas, can you give me any thoughts on Devin's 2-season career so far, and just what you've seen from him?
Yeah, it seems like Devin is starting to carve out a little lane for himself, to me, as like a nice guy, like somebody who always has a big smile. He's good at playing upbeat characters. He's always kind of the jolly guy in sketches. So that's something that stood out to me. I think he's finding that lane. He's great as Tim Scott. And Tim Scott's ordinarily one of those thankless political characters that might be given to some cast members. But Devin really has taken Tim Scott and made a seemingly boring guy like Tim Scott somebody who I want to watch. I like to see Devin play Tim Scott on screen. So kudos to Devin for doing that. And as I had mentioned, nice guy, big smile. Going forward, I think he could parlay that into something more oddball if he wants to, like playing the nice guy, but with something more dark underneath. So I want to see Devin go from nice guy to like more nice guy, but with weird intentions, almost like darkness bubbling underneath the surface. I think that's the next step for Devin, but he's definitely carving a nice lane for himself, to me, as a viewer.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I feel like Keenan definitely has that lane too. Like, I think one of my favorite Keenan tropes, especially when he's playing an old man, is just being like seemingly nice service level, but like a little horny and weird underneath.
Yeah.
And we saw that for the 88th time in the HR sketch. So Bill, what have you seen and liked from Devin in his 30 episodes so far?
Listen, just because I picked him for the draft, and he has got me in first place with Mikey Day, doesn't mean that I knew that he was going to break out. No, listen, he was one of the biggest question marks going into the season, right? I mean, we kind of knew what Marcelo was. We had the weirdness from Longfellow as far as the featured players. Devin and Molly were probably the two that we weren't really sure what they were going to do with their second season. And I think besides Tim Scott, I seeing some of his impressions have been fantastic. Ones that we've seen on the show before by master impressionists like Jay Farrow, Chris Redd. I love his Shannon Sharp, which we only got to see for a few minutes in that pre-tape. He does a great Nate Burleson. So, and I think they've brought Tim Scott back. I mean, he's really not in the zeitgeist. He dropped out of the race. They inserted him into that cold open, and then again in this cold open with Lindsey Graham and the rest. So it's good to see that he does have some impressions in his back pocket. I would like to see him expand on that, and I'd also like to see some more characters from him. I think the character that we got in the Dakota Johnson episode, the baggage handler, was fantastic. Very Keenan-esque, but like to see more of that from him. But great sophomore season for Devin.
Yeah, also Draymond Green an update. So a couple sports impressions with
exactly.
Shannon and Nate Burleson. So I did do some number crunching on his Tim Scott. So as I mentioned, 4 times now doing that character, which is good for a recurring character, especially someone as not notable as South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. So right now he's racked up 7 minutes 21 seconds as Tim Scott. And of his 33 minutes, 53 seconds this season, that's 21.7% of his season has been Tim Scott. So, of course, this cold open helped a lot, coming in there with JJ, Mikey, and Marcelo. And that was his longest career appearance, was in that cold open this week. I did look at his, how he stacks up with this cast. 34 appearances puts him 11th. In the 33-53 screen time, puts him 13th. I did a breakdown. He's been in 7 cold opens, 15 live sketches, 9 pre-tapes, 3 times an update. And of his 30 career episodes, he's never been shut out. So he's had 7 episodes under a minute, but he's never missed an episode. So he's kind of a perfect attendance like JJ, Mikey Day. Never missed an episode. And he has 29 career appearances that are over a minute. So I kind of use that line to say like that's more of a quality appearance if you're on screen for more than a minute. So I want to ask you, Bill, who do you think Keenan has had the most shared segments with in his career? Give me one guess and I'll go to Thomas.
In his career, oh my goodness, Sudeikis.
Devin Walker?
You said Keenan.
Oh, I said Keenan. My bad. I gave you the answer. It was Keenan.
That's a good guess, though, Bill.
Yeah. Reading my notes, I'm like, yep, it was Keenan Thompson at 51 appearances. Thomas, who do you think is number 2 for Devin Walker? Not
Devin
Keenan.
Walker?
Yeah.
I think Andrew
Good call,
Dismukes.
Bill.
Is it Dismukes?
Dismukes would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. They've shared 36 segments together.
Okay,
who would be
not
number
Andrew.
2, you think?
JJ.
JJ nailed it. 46 times they've been a segment together. And I'm a guy who looks at a lot of numbers and tries to parse them and try to manipulate them in a way that it makes sense and has context. So I was thinking like, well, Devin could be in a sketch for 4 seconds and JJ could be doing Trump for 5 minutes, and that's they're not really sharing a lot of screen time there. So I did look at instances where Devin Walker and somebody else had more than a minute in the same segment. I got the same people. So JJ and Keenan, 11 times a piece, have had more than a minute of screen time with Devin Walker. And JJ actually beats Keenan here, 49 minutes, 6 seconds total. And Keenan, 40 minutes, 15 seconds total. And that's, again, like quality time together in the sketch. So if you're watching on YouTube with us or you're not watching on YouTube, I did put a bar graph of all Devin's episodes and what his screen time was. So, Bill, you see that one really big bar? Do you remember what that episode was?
I was on with you, I believe. That was Megan Thee Stallion. Yeah.
So that was Devin Walker's highest screen time, but he's been pretty consistent. He only had a little dip mid-season this year in 49, but definitely up and coming. And I think people might be a little surprised that Devin Walker and Marcelo are like really taking the charge of that class. So Thomas, when you saw last year's premiere and see Michael Longfellow on Update, you might think this is like the new face for that class. And Devin has the most appearances and Marcelo has the most screen time. So I'll parlay a little bit into Marcelo's huge year. What can you say about those two classmates?
Oh man, yeah. Longfellow tending to get shut out of episodes, not totally like technically shut out maybe, but just his impact on episodes has been a little disappointing to me, because you're right. Like, we saw Longfellow on Update the beginning of his tenure, and it was like, man, this guy he's going to be like the next great, like he'll go on Update and do his stand up, and he's been good on Update, but he hasn't quite found his footing or niche or something. So I would have thought going into this season it would have been Marcello and Longfellow out of that class to have the biggest impact. So Devin kind of overtaking Longfellow, because I think Marcello's doing about what I thought, maybe even a little bit more. Devin overtaking Marcello, or overtaking Longfellow, bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, I think most people would agree, because it just seemed like, not that Michael Longfellow and Pete Davidson are one for one by any mean, but it could fill a role in just normal sketches. Just, younger Kassenberg, just kind of a guy who could play, the friend or the son in a sketch, that we thought we might see from Michael Longfellow, sliding in onto Update. And Devin Walker has been a great utility player, and you'll see him in sketches like the They're Listening sketch with the Green Bay Packers toy that they mentioned in that sketch. So you'll see Devin Walker at the table and not Michael Longfellow. So Devin Walker has definitely won over the room a little bit, just enough to be the fourth, player in the sketch, not a lead by any means. But I want to ask you, Bill, do you think, or not a prediction, just, your opinion as my friend here, should Devin be upgraded to the regular cast next year?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, he should. I think everybody should come back. We know that it can take 3 or 4 years sometimes for folks to really get their footing in, or find their niche. And Devin definitely is one of the people who should be brought back for sure next year. So glad to see everything that he's been able to do this year. Like you said, roles that we didn't necessarily think were going to go to him. And finding those impressions that I mentioned. So yeah, definitely should be upgraded for 50.
And Thomas, I'll ask you, do you think he will be upgraded next year?
Yeah, I think he will be. I think everybody in that class probably will be, unless they move on from the show. So like Devin, Marcello, Michael, Molly, I think they all will be, probably after 2 years of being a featured player. I don't want to like predict anybody leaving the show, so I'll say Devin will be, and everybody else will be. Probably Chloe Trost, unless they hire somebody new for next year. Chloe Trost might be the only featured player next season.
Yeah, I feel like if they do that, they will hire someone new. I don't know if anyone will leave, but do you think that Devin Walker, to wrap him up, like has a brand yet on the show? Like, there's a Devin Walker thing you can point to yet?
Not necessarily. Tim Scott might be the closest thing, but I think he's still finding his footing. I think Bill brought up a great point. Like, it takes three seasons to really find that brand. Usually, unless you're like, usually it's the outliers who have like a solid brand right off the bat. So I don't know that Devin quite has that just yet. Might be a function of the cast just being huge, and it's kind of hard to find a brand as a cast member. But I think he's getting there, definitely. That's no shame on Devin for not having found like a distinct brand already as a cast member.
Because we saw Sarah like immediately. Maybe we even knew going in, but like
Sure.
there's a brand of someone who was a rookie, and JAJ with Trump and Biden. Like, there's a brand of political impressionist. So, and speaking of like the political impressions, there's a chance. I mean, Ken just mentioned in the chat about Tim Scott being tapped for a VP pick for Trump's campaign. So we could be seeing him used a lot. I mean, we saw Maya Rudolph used a lot as the Kamala Harris impression. So basically, I think 5 out of 6 episodes to start that year with Jim Carrey as Biden. So if we see Devin Walker continue that impression, and then all of a sudden that subject becomes a way bigger national name, then of course they'll keep him. So yeah, I mean, I agree that I think all 4 rookies, I'd love to see them come back, bring something that I like to see on the show, and I like fresh faces. But it's pretty rare in SNL history to have a 2 and done. We've seen 1 and dones. I think Luke Null in Urban Dictionary is, you look it up and it says a one and done cast member because it's just so synonymous. But Bill, just because you're my resident historian here, and I just love you so much, can you remember the last 2 season wonders at all? Because it's been only like 2 since 2000, and before that only a handful.
If Bill gets this wrong, can I steal?
Of course.
Okay, go
Since
ahead, Bill.
2000, boy, that's interesting. The first person that comes to my mind is in the 90s, Jay Moore.
Yep, Jay Moore is on the list.
Ooh, 2000s. I'm blanking. I can't think of who's only been on the show for 2 years.
All right, can I go to Thomas?
Go for it.
I think Paul Britton was a
You'd
2
be
and
correct.
out. Okay, Paul Britton is there another one?
There's one more. Paul Britton was 2010 to 2012.
2012.
And
yeah.
he left mid-season in his
He was
second
a season and a half. Yeah.
Season and a half. Maybe Casey Wilson.
Casey Wilson. That's it.
The chat helped with that. I had thought maybe Casey Wilson, but Ken helped in the chat a little bit to confirm that. So
a lot of these can be explained. We have the early cast like Jim Belushi, Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase also left in the second season during it. And then, Brad Hall, Harry Shearer, technically, because they were separated by years. Jim Belushi, Robert Smigel, Jay Moore, Michael McKeon, Fred Wolf, who didn't really appear much, but just people that were technically in 2 different seasons, and that was it. So, it hasn't happened in a while, but I don't think it will happen this time. So, I will move on to our last segment, but, there's a lot to talk about because we are now 12 episodes into this season, and I feel like we're just getting started right now. So we're going to look at the power rankings. The chart is getting bigger, and Bowen Yang still top dog, 98.8. This is the power ranking, takes in consideration screen time, appearances, all weighted averages in the SNL supercomputer. So Bowen Yang, top dog. Mikey Day, number 2, right behind, 96.5. Heidi Gardner staying strong with a great episode last week. She's at an 89. Colin Jost, 82.1. Number 5 is Keenan, 77.1. Number 6, JAJ, 71.2. So there's a big drop off between 5 and 6. Ego Wodum, 68.9. Chloe Feynman, 63.2. Michael Che, 58.1, and we have another tie. We had a tie a couple weeks ago, but now it's Marcelo in Dismukes. Marcelo is at a 58.0, Dismukes as well. So if I go into the third decimal point, Marcelo is a touch ahead of Dismukes, but another close race. And then right behind by 0.4 is Sarah Sherman. So end of the year, we'll see who rises at the top there. But it's Marcelo, Dismukes, and Sarah locked. Devin Walker, 48.1. Punky Johnson, 39.5. Chloe Trost, 36.2. Michael Longfellow, 34.7. And Molly Carney at a 27.7. So this is taking into consideration the average score that they get impact-wise on each episode that they've appeared in. So, Bill, we haven't talked, I think, since the Michael B. Jordan episode where Dismukes had a great night. What do you see now that looking at a power ranking for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, I love these numbers. Dismukes feels like he's having a renaissance a little bit this season, but then it kind of seems like he's looking at the numbers a little bit further down than I would have thought. But boy, again, a lot of parity. Go from 8 to 12, and it's just inches between numbers here. No real standouts. Nobody who we wouldn't think would be higher or lower. I am a little surprised. I've been watching you, obviously, and seeing Bowen take that top spot has been an interesting journey. Interested to know why Keenan has dropped off. Has it been by his choice? Because as we've talked about many times, I mean, it was always just plug Keenan into a sketch. Did he decide to take a step back? Because it can't be because of his abilities. It can't be because they can't find something for him to do. So him at 5 is a little shocking week after week now. But yeah, I think this is right about where we would expect everybody to be.
And like I mentioned earlier, the Shane Gillis episode had a lot of strong performances from the cast. I'll just highlight those. Mikey Day, Heidi, and Marcelo, all north of 100. So I say it all the time that an episode that's above a 60, I would say is a great episode, or at least a good episode. Episode over 100 is like should be on your reel for SNL. So we saw, Heidi in everything. We saw Mikey do a lot. Cold open. He was in pre-tape, and he did just was everywhere. So we have Marcelo, who did an update feature and the cold open. So of course he's way up there. A lot of quality screen time. But that the three-way tie, or almost four-way tie, like Bill mentioned, Che, Marcelo, Dismukes, and Sarah. I'm very interested in following that race. Thomas, what do you think?
Man, I hate to say this because I love Bowen, but Bowen being number one is sort of emblematic of how I feel as about the season as a whole. It's a little bit up and down, just like Bowen's performances for me. And I noticed that my favorite episodes have less Bowen, and my least favorite episodes have more Bowen. And like I said, I love Bowen. A couple of seasons ago, I predicted that this star would rise. Like, he really impressed me. But there's just something about his performance this season that's been a little up and down for me. A lot of Garrett from Hinge types of things for me this season from Bowen that I haven't enjoyed. So Bowen being at the top of the list is almost like pretty appropriate for how I felt about the season as a whole. So that's really interesting. It sort of matches up for me.
I love takes like that, Thomas, because this is why I geek out about this graph, because it's the most complicated stat that I possess. And when you look back, you can trace your favorite cast member. So if you're watching, you can say, when can I see the most Dismukes? Just like,
Yeah.
Trace your finger to the right and find where the Dismukes are the most quality episodes, not necessarily garbage time, but had starring roles and was in a lot of sketches. So that's what the stat is all about. And that's so interesting, Thomas, because I feel like heavy lies the crown at SNL when Kate McKinnon was just eating screen time, for better or worse. People would complain too much Kate. So they said the same thing about Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
They say about Keenan. I don't know if people said about Bill Hader, but they said it about Pete Davidson when he was in a lot of sketches. Which when it happened, and it wasn't just update, was a rarity, but it's Pete Davidson got attention elsewhere, obviously. So that brings me to kind of my final question is, I wanted you guys to rank your season 49 episodes, and I have not heard these, so I'm very excited. Who wants to go first?
You asked the two biggest nerds that you know
Yep.
to do rankings. That's what we live for, Mike.
Yeah, while the power rankings lie on the screen, we're gonna get the Bill and Thomas episode rankings.
Okay.
So I don't know, how do you want to do this? Let's do can we go back and forth? We mind doing that? Like 1, 1, 2, 2? Because I want to see how similar they are.
Or start at 1.
Let's start at 12.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Who wants to go first? Any volunteers?
I'll go first. I'll say my least favorite episode, number 12, is Jacob Elordi.
Okay. Bill?
Number last with a bullet, Jacob Elordi.
All right. I mean, I wish we could dissect every episode, but we're up against it. But I wanted to get through them. But I think I would agree with that, guys. If I did my own ranking. So number 11. Let's go to Bill for this one.
Bad Bunny. Number 11.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thomas?
Number 11 for me is Jason Momoa.
Okay. I'm with you on that one too. And then Thomas, number 10.
Okay. 10, Pete Davidson's episode.
Bill?
Same, 10, Pete Davidson.
All right, we line up on 2 out of 3. So now we're to Bill for number 9 of this season, ranked.
9 will be Momoa for me.
Okay, similar. And then Thomas?
All right. I got Dakota Johnson, number 9.
And then give me your number 8.
My number 8, oh, this hurts. Emma Stone, number 8 for me. And it's no offense to Emma. Love Emma. You know that, but yeah.
Yeah, I love Emma as well. And I'll give a quick plug. Tomorrow night, I'm recording an episode with Thomas on SNL Hall of Fame. Well, I will be nominating Emma Stone. So I'm sure if you listen to that episode, and please do support his podcast. But Emma Stone, great host. I thought it was a pretty bad episode. Yeah. So I'll have to reconcile that with him tomorrow night. Bill, over to you.
Number 8, right? Dakota will be my number 8.
And then give me your number 7.
Emma Stone.
All right. Going back and forth.
Seems like there's one big discrepancy with
Yeah.
Bill so far. So,
Yep.
so number 7, I love her, but Io, that episode totally
What?
clicked for me. She was a great host, but I'm just ranking episodes, not hosts.
Yeah, and it's tough, and that's why I love these conversations with people like you guys, because a great host can only do so much. Is
Yeah.
what I say, because I kind of like fell in love with Io in that episode. I've never seen her act in my life, never even heard of her, and then I was like, I'm now like a huge fan of this person. And the episode, the writing and the sketches like weren't that great for me, but
Agreed.
I loved her. Bill, over to you, right? Or am I going back to Thomas? I forget.
Thomas do his 6th.
Yeah, Thomas, give
No.
me your 6.
So my 6 is Timothy Chalamet.
Okay, Bill.
Number 6 is Timothy Chalamet.
We're locked again.
Ooh.
All right, now
number
we're
5
getting the top 5s.
Yes.
Number 5 would be Shane for me.
I got
All right, so-
Kate McKinnon's number 5.
Thomas, give me your 4. We're getting down to it.
All right, my number 4 episode is Adam Driver's.
Number 4 is Adam Driver. We did not plan this, folks.
No.
No. This is fun though, because we haven't done this
Yeah.
all season, and now we have a good sample size. All right, so Bill, you're going to give us your number 3 now.
Number 3 would be Kate for me.
And this episode got so much better for me upon rewatch. I have Shane Gillis as number 3 episode.
Awesome. So we both have the latest episode in our top 5. I think all 3 of us.
Yeah.
Which is, I went in with, like I said, very hesitant expectations for that episode, and I thought the sketches were really, really good, and the cast was like firing in that episode. So now we are over to Bill, right?
Are we? Number
Go for
2?
Yeah,
would
number
be
2.
Io for me.
And remind the listeners, Thomas, where you had Io.
I had Io number 7.
Okay. And Bill, you also had Kate a lot higher, right?
Couples. What did you have her at 5, Thomas?
Kate was number 5 for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had
And
her at 3.
so now we're at number 2.
Yep.
Bill.
All right.
All right. I have the Bad Bunny episode, number 2 for me. And Bill, where do you have Bad Bunny?
That would be number 11. Thomas.
11.
Okay. The Age of Discovery was one of my favorite sketches of the season. The Bad Bunny is Shrek PDD one I really loved. The Protective Mom 2 really spoke to me. There was just like the whole vibe of the show. It's like I really love the Bad Bunny episode. And you're hurting me, Bill, right now.
And Bill, we need to have a point counterpoint here. So, we don't need to bury the episode, but why would it be your 11 and Thomas's 2?
Thomas, you ignorant slut. Listen, now I think the only thing I really enjoyed from that episode, like truly would put on a reel that I would want to rewatch, would be The Right Track, which Bad Bunny had very little to do with. I think there was something lost in the translation. It was not his fault, but most of it didn't work for me. The Shrek PDD, you're not the first person I've heard say that loves that. That's one of my least favorite PDDs. Like I'm not sure. That one just didn't work for me. So, but yeah, other than that, there was nothing in that episode that really hit me.
Fair points. Yeah. I mean, so that means that I didn't do an official ranking. But if I did, I would at least know my number 1 and my number 12. And it looks like all 3 of us, number 1 would be episode 3, first timer, Nate Bargatze.
Great episode.
Yep.
Nate
So,
was a great host. Yeah.
Yeah, Thomas, what can you say about that episode as far as like a sketch highlight?
Gosh, the George Washington sketch, I think, was a standout for a lot of people during that episode. Washington's Dream, that was a good one. I even liked the Chef Showdown. I thought Nate handled
I love
himself
both
well.
of those.
That was awesome. And I don't want to steal Bill's thunder. I'm curious to what Bill liked from that episode too. But
You already
just
took
a
him
fun
from me,
episode.
Thomas. Forget it.
You only like 2 sketches from your favorite
No,
episode?
no. No, there was a lot of good episodes, a lot of good sketches in that, and I love his stand-up too. I think it was really a stellar set that he did. So, yeah, he just fit in with the cast. And that's why I have Io as high as I do as well. Uh, just the meshing with the members of the cast, feeling like they're a part of it, and having some really, I mean, the George Washington sketch, one of the best of the last 5 years. Never mind just this season. So, and he played that perfectly. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a common opinion. Rarely do we have such a galvanizing fan base with SNL. People have a lot of opinions, which I love, which is why it's worthy of podcasting about. But I'll look at that rundown again. It was, again, Foo Fighters with a musical guest. We had the Biden Halloween cold open with Christopher Walken, a long monologue, 9 minutes, 19 seconds from Bargatze doing stand-up. The Chef Show, Thomas mentioned, the Hallmark Horror pre-tape, Washington's Dream, Lake Beach. I mean, no one mentioned that, but
That was great.
that's one of my favorite pre-tapes of the season, and there's been a lot of good ones. Then Trick or Treat with Fran Drescher, Sarah playing her. Then we had Sarah right away as Colin's agent, JJ Gordon. The airplane sketch, which I thought was very underrated for a good episode. But what's the most important job? Doctor, lawyer, teacher, all that stuff. And then we had a pretty weak PDD with the dog food one to wrap up the night. But overall, great episode, especially for a first timer. And the writers really got the tone of the host, which I think might be a common thread here. So with Emma Stone, I think she did a lot of the heavy lifting, but the sketches were kind of weak. And with Bargatze, we had both, where we had a strong host, strong material. So that is going to do it. But Thomas, please plug what's going on your podcast, because I think you're a very talented podcaster.
Oh, thank you, Mike. That's so kind of you. And you are, again, we were recording tomorrow. You're going to be on the Emma Stone episode with me at the SNL Hall of Fame. A lot of great season 5. I think a lot of these episodes and stuff are really coming together. Bill was on earlier this season, breaking down Martin Short's candidacy as a host. This week we had Gary Seath and Brad Robinson from the Not Ready for Primetime podcast talking about Lorraine Newman. They also advocated for a lot of the original, kind of the earlier era of SNL. A little preview next week. Kristen Raiola is going to be on for Taran Killam, and we have SNN favorite Kalina Steckel on the following week as my guest. So that was a lot of fun. So go check out the SNL Hall of Fame and my other podcast, Pop Culture 5, that I do with Jeremy Dove. We go over 5 essential whatevers of different pop culture topics. For example, recently we did 5 essential romantic comedies. We had a guest on for that, author Aaron Carlson. This week, 5 essential Metallica songs. And next week, we're getting a little meta. We're talking about 5 essential podcasts. So if you want to listen to a podcast, break down some podcasts, listen next week to Pop Culture 5.
Who doesn't love a good top 5?
Yeah, absolutely. Then you're talking, so I'm saying you're talking to one of the right people to like make a list.
Yeah, I love lists. That's what we do here. All right, Bill Kenney, BK Love 73. So good to have you back. I mean, we could talk about SNL for hours, the three of us. But if people want to see you again, do you have any upcoming spots?
Yeah, I'll actually be joining John this Saturday for the Hot Take Show. Always a good time to be on that show with all the wonderful crazies in the chat as well.
Sydney Sweeney and Casey Musgraves coming up. Any predictions?
Hoping. I know it's been a couple seasons since she's been on, but I'm hoping for a White Lotus. I know we got the Black Lotus last year, but anything to have Feynman bring out the Jennifer Coolidge impression again. So. Fingers crossed.
True. I'm excited for that episode. I think it'll be a solid one. I like the middle episodes of a 3-show run. So yeah, we'll check you out, Bill. And again, tonight we are presented by latenighter.com. So thank you to those folks at that site for just promoting what we do, and we want to promote them as well. I will be back next Wednesday, of course, to break down that episode. I'm a huge Casey Musgraves fan. Loved her performances before. I've seen her in concert a lot, and her Casey Musgraves song was my wedding song. So I got a good connection with Casey, and that would be Golden Hour. So if you know that song, then check it out. Also, that album ended up winning Album of the Year. So we love Casey. All right. So we will see you next time for Thomas Sena, Bill Kenney. I am Mike Murray of the SNN. Thank you as always for listening. We really appreciate it. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.